Everyone, we'll give it a minute or so to let people file in, and then we will get started here in about a minute or two. We'll go ahead and give it here just one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first Business to Business Town Hall. My name is Kaylee Hogan Schnitker. I'm the Director of Talent Strategy for the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. We're really excited to have you all here joining us. Before we begin, I will just have a few housekeeping items. If you have a question or a comment, please be sure to use the Q&A function or the chat box. We'll be watching those and we'll handle questions at the end of our time together today. Additionally, we will be recording this session in order to accommodate for those who are unable to attend. Our event today represents the first in a series of business-to-business events or town hall series that came from the recommendations of the Mayor's Economic Recovery Task Force. These recommendations from the Mayor's Task Force are to cultivate more opportunities for peer-to-peer support among local businesses or the direct sharing of information, resources, and experience among the Lincoln community. The topic today is employee mental health and social connectedness. According to a survey circulated by the task force, which had over 265 respondents, supporting employee mental health and social connectedness was a top 5 area in which Lincoln businesses are seeking additional support. For today's event, we'll first hear from a couple of speakers on a topic, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and discussion at the end. Again, please be sure to use the question and answer box as well as the chat if you do have any questions or information. Please join me in welcoming our wonderful speakers who are joining us today. We have Gail Sutter, who's the Executive Director of Continuum EAP, a nationally recognized, locally based provider of employee assistance programming and consultations. We have Sam Dolezal, Wellbeing Advocate for Union Bank and Trust, and Angela Garvitz, chef and owner of Goldenrod Pastries. We are so grateful to have these speakers address the effects of COVID-19 on employee mental health, as well as help strategize with employers on how they can easily implement to promote employee well-being in these challenging times. So Gail, I will hand it on over to you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be here with you and to talk about the mental health concerns we've had. Boy, 2020 has been quite a year, has it not? We've dealt with COVID, we've dealt with some racial tensions, we've got politics happening. What we know is people are dealing with all kinds of things that are impacting them emotionally. I think about every article you read about COVID talks about mental health and the impacts that workplaces are dealing with. And what we know is people are just tired. They're dealing with a lot. We hear about Zoom fatigue. Well, now we're hearing about pandemic fatigue, and it's real, and people are feeling it, and businesses are identifying that they have to address it and do something different with it. We know there's a whole lot of complex emotions that go on with it. People are more stressed and more worried than they've ever been. We keep hearing about people saying, when are we going to get to go back to normal? Well, I don't think there's going to be a normal anymore. I think it's just being able to adjust. I hear all the time people talking about emotional exhaustion, and some of that comes from every decision you make. We were having a conversation before this started about what are folks doing for Halloween, and people have to think about what they're doing. Should I be doing this? Can I be doing this? That all takes extra effort for things that used to not be difficult to make decisions about. We know that loneliness, lack of connectedness is certainly real, as is grief and loss of a lot of things. And I will talk more about the depression and anxiety levels that are increasing. One of the things we know is that what's happening in our world today is having a huge impact on the mind and the body. We know that about 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms caused by stress. Those are going to impact them on a daily basis. 73% of people are experiencing psychological symptoms caused by stress. Now, we've always known that stress is a big deal, but we're seeing these numbers higher than they've ever been. Here's the thing that businesses are picking up on, the impact of stress that's having on them. What percentage of employees said they were less productive at work as a result of stress? Well, I've got a survey there, and I'm not going to poll you because we have limited time today. But
Gail, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Sure.
I don't believe we can see your screen.
Oh. Okay, let me see what I can do here then. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Good. Oh, sorry about that. I was talking away as a part of that. Well, here's some percentages of employees. And let's see if I can make it work here too. And if you guess 51%, sorry about that, you were right. Over 50% of employees are saying they're less productive at work due to the stress they're feeling as a part of that. One of the things we know is 41% of people feel burned out, drained or exhausted from their work. And 1 in 4 report feeling down, depressed, and hopeless. Yet here's the scary part is yet more than 1 in 3 have not done anything to cope with those feelings. So we're talking a lot about what we're feeling, but we're not doing a lot about that. And I think that's where we're really feeling like employers have to up what they're doing and try to help. Some interesting more stats that I want to just throw at you before I throw out some things to do is what age group do you think is most likely to report high levels of emotional stress during COVID? Well, it's very interesting because one of the things we know is that younger Americans are more likely to report high levels of emotional distress of what they're feeling as a part of that than any other age group. And what we know is also that we're finding different approaches because older Americans are more concerned about their health, while younger Americans are typically more worried about their financial situation. So what we know is that we have to have different approaches for different people. We can't have one size that fits all. We know that 31% reported symptoms of anxiety or depression disorder. And we know that trauma and stress is up. Substance use is up. And also we know that those folks seriously considering suicide is up. And that's twice the rate it was just 2 years ago on the exact same survey. So those are all scary factors about what we need to do and how do we approach this. The good news is there are things you can do as a workplace, and I'm just going to talk about more conceptually some things, and I know Sam is going to offer up some very specific resources that you can use. I believe there's a three-tiered approach. The first one is creating a culture that fosters a mentally healthy workplace. One of the things we know is different people are willing to open up about their mental health, depending on their age group and where they function. 62% of millennials are very comfortable talking about their mental health, while only 32% of baby boomers are. So once again, we have to figure out how do we have different resources that are going to allow them to access. Some want to talk about it, others don't, but still need the resources. One of the things that's a big thing when we talk about culture, about mental health, is when we've looked at studies, still 64% of employees think if they reach out to HR or management about a mental health issue, it can negatively impact their job security. And 8 out of 10 workers with a mental health condition report shame and stigma keep them from seeking treatment. We've got to do something different about that. And that's the very first stage, is as an organization, we have to be able to say, dealing with mental health is acceptable and something that needs to happen and is important to us. So one of the things we need to do is make your culture accepting of dealing with mental health, that it is something that we know is out there. Talk to your leaders about being proactive if they see folks struggling. Work on problem solving and accountability. Discuss the need for social connectedness. If we can't start with the culture, it's going to be really hard to build on and get people to use the resources, even if you have them there. Part of creating that is being vulnerable. We know that if your leaders can be a little bit vulnerable and talk about their stressors, talk about what they've done, talk about some of the things that they think are important, it has a big impact. Modeling healthy behaviors. If I'm using the resources that are there, not just offering them, but talking about how you've used them and how they've been helpful. Talk about them in real life. These are the kinds of things that we're dealing with. I know somebody that used this in this situation, not just here's a resource. Give them permission, encourage them, and build that connection where you're checking in and talking with people about what their needs are. And when you're talking about it, doesn't mean they're in trouble. It means you're caring and you're asking on a regular basis. And encourage coworkers to be understanding, because that's important, that we are a culture that addresses and does this. The second tier is providing good resources for emotional health. We build the culture, but then we have to have something to offer up to them as a part of that. I'm with an EAP, and I think those are very important, and that'll be my piece where I promote that. But I think one of the things we know is that having resources, people will reach out. And we're finding more and more people are reaching out to the EAP all the time. I think sometimes they traditionally think of EAP as a counseling service, and we certainly offer that. But we offer lots of problem-solving services, financial services. When we talk about those stressors that people are having, that's important. Wellness programs need to talk about mental health. We talked about finance is huge. You need to have financial wellness programming. Mental health awareness months. Offer resources that don't have to be expensive. You can offer apps as a small employer. Our biggest growth in our EAP industry is companies under the size of 40 right now, is they're starting to reach out and seek those services. It's also just important to express concern. Talk about what you're seeing with people. Talk about that you care about them. Listen to what they're saying. It doesn't mean you have to fix things for them, but yet if you ask, most people will share some information, and then you can offer some resources, whether that's from your HR department if you're larger, if it's an EAP, or community resources. And Sam will talk about some of those. The third tier is actively intervene with your troubled employees. And what that means is have a conversation. If an employee says, I just can't handle everything that's happening, I'm not sleeping, I can't make decisions, or maybe shares they're going through a divorce and struggling, or they're really worried about their elderly parents who are having health issues and it's all they can think about, is respond with, I'm sorry about this. I'm concerned about you. You don't have to have all the answers, but whether it's using your employee assistance program, using a community resource, it's really important that you're acknowledging what's going on and you're identifying that you're willing to help them and you encourage them to take care of it. What we want people to do is spiral up and be able to cope with what's going on rather than hiding it and not addressing and dealing it and spiraling down as a part of that. One of the things that's important, and people always say, is, well, I'm in the workplace. Should I get involved in people's mental health? What can I do? I don't want to overwhelm. I think that the problem is that we get on two ends of the spectrum. Sometimes we don't even acknowledge it. And how does that work for engagement for employees? We have to acknowledge it, but you also don't have to get over involved and know all the details and be the one that gets them the help. Offering the help, making it something that you encourage and you're able to work with them to get the help is what's most important as a part of that. And I believe the workplace is a strong contributor to mental health and well-being. If you give the people the opportunity to feel productive and achieve their potential, we have to not only talk about physical health and what the workplace needs, but we have to talk about mental health. We have to open that conversation up and be willing to be able to address it, offer resources, and provide support as they deal with all of the things. And I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think this is COVID's bringing it to our awareness, but I think it's something that's going to continue on as a part of that. I'm going to shift gears and turn it over to Sam, who is going to talk about Union Bank and Trust, wonderful wellness programming, and also has put together a lot of resources from the community that you can access as a part of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gail. And I will get my screen shared in that time. As kind of another introduction, my name is Sam Dolezal. I'm the Wellbeing Advocate here at Union Bank and Trust. So hopefully you can see the full presentation here. Perfect. So what we're really going to talk about in this portion is what can I do to help mentally support and emotionally connect my people? And so every organization is different. You have your own needs, your own, quirks to your organization and what you need. The things that I'm going to offer up are things that we have done at Union Bank and Trust. But again, you mold them into what you need, what your people are looking for, and the gaps that you can fill. So again, some of these might just be the creative juices that you need to start to think a little bit outside of the box and what would work for you. But you might also say, that's exactly what we need. I'm going to take that and move that into our organization. So just have an open mind as we walk through some of these things, as they may or may not fit you exactly. But again, you can mold them into what you need them to be. So we're going to start with a more formal mental health approach. And these, again, are all things that we've been doing at Union Bank. And so the first one is to offer to employees to take a mental health screening. And these are fairly easy to use. They're free and confidential. Mental Health America and Bryan Health both offer online versions of them. And we'll touch on what they exactly offer. But a lot of times these mental health screenings can lead to early diagnosis and identification, and they can also serve as a baseline. So individuals can kind of get a feel for where they actually sit when it comes to certain mental health aspects. It can also be the connection to mental health resources as well. An individual may take one of these screenings and say, oh, I didn't realize that, my anxiety was, kind of starting to flare up, and I really should start to talk to someone. Where do I start? So again, this is kind of a nice starting point where an employee doesn't necessarily have to reach out to HR or to their management. They can do this on their own time. Neither one of these organizations track, so they can't go back in and say, well, so-and-so took this mental health screening. But again, it just gives us a baseline for that individual, as well as starting to open up the conversation around it. So what are some of the screenings that are available? Mental Health America is on the left. Bryan Health is on the right of your screen. And as you can see, there's a variety of offerings from both organizations. The one that I think stuck out the most to me was in the middle of those blue squares is the parent test. And most of us think, okay, a parent is, especially with kids, maybe they're juggling the both parent role and teacher role and work from home role, and we're at home all the time role. I mean, as you can start to see, a lot of these are not necessarily what we would consider mental illness, but mental health, as we all have mental health. And just like physical health, we do need to spend some time taking care of it and nurturing it so that we're in a place to live our best life. So the screenings is one option to essentially just offer up to your employees. And then the second one is mental health training. So again, another more formal aspect of mental health, but there's multiple organizations in our community that offer them. So those are listed on the right for you. And these are similar to what we would think of as CPR, AED training, first aid training. but for a mental health perspective. So again, the goal here is to educate and engage your employees in helping others. Again, when we're in crisis mode, how can we help one another? Gail had touched on this a little bit earlier in her slides, but again, fostering that culture of we're here for one another and we know what to say, what to do, how to then move individuals into the resources that are available. And so as an employer, what exactly can you do? How can we take these screenings and trainings and then move them into our workplace? So the ways you can help: make these screenings and trainings readily available, make them accessible, bring them up, let your employees know that, hey, we support you using these. We want you to live your best life. And so that could be through whatever communication works best for you. Internal intranet, email, team meeting announcements. Again, many times employees don't know that they're there and that they're free and that, hey, you can just participate. Because again, mental health has always kind of struggled to gain traction. And now we're starting to really see that with this current pandemic. And so again, you as an employer, create that culture by saying, hey, we want you to use these. We want you to know where you stand. The second piece is early and often. So encourage individuals, keep it on the forefront. It's not just a once a year, hey, this is mental health week. It's a all the time. It's a, hey, these are always available for you. These are there and we want you to utilize them on a regular basis. Not a, okay, the world feels like it's falling down around me. I don't know where to start. When we start with some of these things and we're a little bit more proactive, our employees have the resources and the tools to either A, get the help they need, or B, work with individuals such as HR, management, coworkers to again have that support around them, as well as understand. Gail, I brought up the point again, we need to have that little bit, that culture of empathy for one another. And when we go through these things and start to understand really what mental health and mental illness is, we get a little bit better at having empathy for one another as we work through this pandemic. So we are going to switch to a little bit more informal mental health and employee connectiveness. And this one is actually getting outside. Now we say, okay, that seems really simple, like just so straightforward. What's the catch? Most of us don't do enough of it. So how can we encourage this though? We can encourage this by simply doing it ourselves. We as the leaders, either as coworkers or managers or owners, we are the role models. And so we need to also do this. We tend to get stuck in front of our phones and in front of our screens, our TVs, computers. We spend so much time that a lot of times we give up that outside time. We don't take the time for the break. And I know even when we're working from home or we're at a job, there is a lot of moving parts. There is a lot of stress. And so we need to be able to take that break and go outside and take that time away. So fun fact, research shows that only 20 minutes is needed to see a mental health benefit outside. That could even be, hey, find a window, open the window. I mean, that seems, you're like, okay, that's really like easy. Is it really that easy? It is really that easy. But let's say you want to get your employees involved now. How do I transition this to an employee aspect? So transition to walking meetings when possible. So we know that we want to have that emotional and personal connection through Zoom. But as Gail had mentioned, that Zoom fatigue is a very real thing. And so if you know, hey, I can get on this conference call and I can call in versus sitting in front of a screen for another hour when I'm spending 40 hours a week doing it, take that advantage, take care of it. Even again, that 10, 20 minutes, you're going to see a great improvement. The second piece is create a walking group, such as Walking Wednesdays. That is something we did internally at Union Bank. And again, it's just an open invitation to anybody. Hey, we're going to go walk at 11 o'clock. Take a little bit of a break. It's going to be a 5 to 10 minute walk. Just head around the building. Whether you have remote employees or in-person employees, again, that kind of connectivity, hey, I'm part of something bigger than me just walking outside, is also helpful to help employees know that even if I'm not there, I'm still there in spirit. The last piece is to try a walking challenge between employees. And again, this is dependent on your organization, what you feel they need, the schedules that exist. But again, this can be something that they do on their own time. You could possibly have a reward or to say, hey, we're going to aim to get 1 million steps by the end of the year. And if we do, we'll do a lunch together. Just some time to have that together, or even just a Zoom lunch together, taking that time for one another. But again, these are all ways that you can incorporate it. They're low cost and no cost. They're doable. And they show your employees that you care about them, both mentally, emotionally, and as people at the end of the day, that they're not just your employees. They're more than that. They're moms, their dads, sisters, and brothers. So that is an informal way that you can kind of target that mental health, employee connectiveness. And the last one we're going to touch on that Union Bank has implemented is mindfulness and meditation. So many of us have a general understanding of mindfulness and meditation, but it really kind of boils down to us taking the time to sit down in a safe, quiet spot, breathe, and let our mind calm. Many of us don't have time for that. We're overstimulated between our phones, our kids, dogs, life, work. There's so many moving parts around us that we really don't take that time to just take a deep breath and settle. And so meditation has proven results in improving anxiety, improving depression, improving blood pressure. And so we go, okay, we understand that, but how can we actually implement this? Because many of us think that meditation is this. This is the impression we get. And that's not a wrong impression, but I don't know about you, but this is not what my backyard looks like. So we kind of have to flip the switch a little bit, and we have to be able to say that we can do meditation here, there, and everywhere. So that's actually what we are going to do today. We are going to do meditation together. And I am going to share my sound with you. Make sure that we're square on that. Okay. All right. So settle into your chair. If you want to take your your pulse before, you surely can. You may see that after this, it'll go down a little bit, but just settle and close your eyes. I'm going to turn it over here to our instructor, Sarah McCurley.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah McCurley, and I'm here today to guide you through 60 seconds of breath work to calm the mind and the body. We'll begin by taking a comfortable seated position. You may have to scooch up to the front of your chair in order to get your feet firmly on the ground. With the feet firmly planted on the floor, make that spine nice and tall, back like a strong wall. I'll invite you to close your eyes, and if this feels uncomfortable, you can gaze down instead towards the floor, just a few inches in front of your knees. We'll start to inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose or the mouth, your choice. Inhale, expanding the ribs and the belly. Exhale, let go. Inhale, get taller. Exhale, softening the forehead and the jaw. Inhale for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Now allow your breath to happen naturally. Soften your focus and open your eyes. How do you feel? Thank you for practicing with me today. I hope to see you again soon.
So hopefully you feel a little bit more relaxed. Hopefully you're breathing a little bit more deeply. And if you took your pulse before, you can take it again now. And you might find that it's a little bit slower. And so, again, this was 2.5 minutes of meditation for you. And you've probably noticed the difference already. And so what would happen if we did 15 or 20 minutes of meditation a few times a week? What would change in our lives? How would our mental health improve? And so to give you a little bit more background about Sarah, she is actually a local yoga, bar, strength, cycling, and mindfulness instructor. We at Union Bank work very closely with her as she has done many of these meditation sessions for us. Her contact information is also listed below. So hopefully you enjoyed those 2.5 minutes. If this is something you would like to share with your group, your company, your employees, we'd like to share the good vibes with you too. So we are doing 4 weeks of meditation with Sarah McCurley, which is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust. It's a weekly 15-minute guided mindfulness practice. It'll be on Tuesdays in November from 2 to 2:15. So if you're ready to sign up, you can email Sarah at movewithmccurley@gmail.com, and she will get you the information along with promo materials that you can share with your employees. So all in all, we've covered lots of different areas that you can cover mental health and support your employees, as well as connecting them to one another. And like we had mentioned in the beginning, every organization is different. Everyone is unique, and you will have to mold any of these ideas as well as others into what's going to fit best for you. But at the end of the day, it comes down to don't give up. We're all in this together. You're not alone, and you matter. And that is the message we're trying to send to our employees. So we're letting them know that we care, and we care very deeply about them as both professionals and as people. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and turn it over to Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Garbitz. I'm the owner of Goldenrod Pastries here in Lincoln, and I have a very, different perspective on this. So where to begin? So I and my staff have not really, we are at the store every day. We're working in person. I know a lot of people are not working in person right now. We've been seeing each other several times a week. And I think that there are a lot of mental health challenges that specifically come with that, because what is happening every day is really scary. And in general, since I started my business, employee mental health has been something that's really important to me to focus on. And I'm with my staff every day. I see them every day. I talk to them every day. And as I've grown a management team with my company, I have worked really hard to instill that same idea with the management team. And, I think that as employers and as managers, it's really easy to ask somebody how they're doing. Maybe an employee that day is going to give you more information than you expected. Like, instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm fine," they're going to give you more information than you necessarily signed up for or thought you were going to get. And I think that it's our responsibility as managers and employers and owners to actually listen to what they're saying. And it has to be more than just asking. It has to be listening, hearing, and responding and checking in the next day. And I think that that's something that is really easy to miss. It's really easy when you have a million things going on, especially in a time like right now, whether you're in person or not, whether there's just a line at the end of an email that somebody drops, people are trying to tell you something. And I think that it's our responsibility to listen to those little keys that people are leaving for us, that our employees are leaving for us. And I think that the more that we do that from the top down, the more that you'll see employees doing that for each other. And that's something that I believe really strongly in modeling. And I believe in leading with honesty and clear communication. And especially right now, I've heard countless stories from my staff of their friends, partners, family members who go to work, whatever go to work means right now, and they are kind of left in the dark in terms of communication regarding the status of the business, the status of other employees' health, whether if they're meeting in person. And I think that honesty and openness has never been more important. And so, there's a lot of really hard conversations that always exist in the workplace, but especially right now, I think it's really scary for all of us. If you're the leader, if you are not the leader, we're all really scared. We're all really nervous all the time. But it's our responsibility to find answers. And those answers can be really comforting for our staff. And right now, I think the most important thing that we can do for employee mental health is to provide those answers and to provide any sort of communication, whether it's, "I don't know the answer. This is all just unfolding for me too. I'm going to try to figure that out for you." But just being open and honest about the process and what's going on. And like I said, we're working in person every day now. And so employee health and safety is really, really important. And so I try to communicate at least once a month, like, this is what we're doing. This is, unless there's something else that's come up and we have to talk more frequently, but this is what we're doing proactively. These are the reminders for you of, according to the CDC, how to safely conduct yourself. And, the most important thing that we can do for ourselves, each other, the business, is to be safe, because that means that you can keep coming to work, you can keep getting paid, you can keep being employed by this organization. And so I think that, the honesty and being upfront has been the most important thing through this whole year. And I see that really positively impacting my staff. And I know that we're all scared, but just have somebody be in a leadership position and try to talk to them and communicate is really valuable. I've heard of countless situations, like I said, where a partner's employer was dishonest or didn't tell the full truth about, a positive test on staff. And, that's really hard for an employee to relay that employer to relay that information. But at the end of the day, your employees deserve the truth. And I think that the more honesty that you can give them, the more valuable it's going to be over time for them. And they're going to have more trust in the process. So, like I said, I come at this from a very different perspective. I think that there are a lot of benefits to being in person right now. That, like, we're very lucky that we don't have the Zoom fatigue, but we do have this fatigue of, what is it like being in front of the general public every day? And what is it like going to work and being next to people every day? And what does that mean? And I think that it's really scary, no matter where you're sitting at this point. But I do really appreciate what Sam was saying about, take the time to get outside. And we try to always share with each other, what are you doing to keep yourself busy? What are you doing to keep yourself feeling really good outside of work? And I think the more that we talk about that, like, the other women were saying, the more that you're open, the more that you talk about what you're doing to cope, the more your staff will talk about it as well. And I think that that's like the key. And that's what we do at Goldenrod. I always talk really openly about my own mental health. If I'm having a tough time, if there's something that I'm struggling with, I try to lead by example. And like Sam, I believe you were saying that we always think that there are two extremes. You either don't share, you don't acknowledge it, or you feel like you're the one who has to solve everything. And that's not the way that it is. Sometimes you just want to talk about it. And sometimes you just need to be the person who listens and hears what people are saying. And I find that to be incredibly powerful in my own operation within COVID and without. And I think that, we're really lucky to be in this time where, unfortunately, mental health has become a bigger issue, but it's a great opportunity to be able to have these conversations. So I hope that's a little bit helpful, coming from a very different perspective. To kind of like just wrap up what I was saying, I think that communication, being very open, being very honest with your team, especially right now, giving them the status of your business, the status of their job, the status of the safety measures, anything you can. I'm an oversharer. And so I tend to give them more than is necessary. But I think that like, your staff deserves that. And it can be really give them a peace of mind. So that is it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We'll now go ahead and open it up for questions. I can go ahead and get one started with one that I had been sent before. Just a main question is, where can employers go to get more of this info? And would you be willing to share your contact information, if so, and other resources?
I guess I will start and then pass it off to whoever. Yes, we would at Union Bank love to share the resources and tools that have worked for us. I did have my contact information as the first slide, so feel free to reach out to me via email or with a quick phone call, and we can talk about different opportunities that we've implemented as well as what that might look like on a smaller or larger scale.
I'll jump in. I'm again very willing to share any information. I believe the slides are going to be able to be shared as a part of this. And I'm always willing to work with any kind of organization. One of the benefits I have is we work with over 100 different companies of all different sizes. I think our smallest is 5 employees. I think our largest is over 6,000. And so thinking about how to take care of employee groups, I'm one that believes in you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. And so, being able to say what I've seen that's worked in different sizes, different types of industries, and always willing to share and help people to be able to make the differences and what really fits for their specific situation.
I'm not a slide girl, but if you, I think my contact information will be available. Always feel free to reach out. And I was going to go back to Gail, one of your slides about the demographics and age groups that are, how this is affecting different age groups. And it's been really interesting to see, I would say, personally working with like that 18 to 29 group, and then also the 30 to 40-ish age group, and how different this is impacting everybody. And there's really tough conversations to be had, especially with people who are home with their kids and trying to figure out what that means. And I think the hardest part for me, at least, and I'm sure that a lot of other managers can relate, is just knowing if you should I say something, should I broach this topic with them, because it's so hard and it's so fresh. But I'm not an expert, but in my own opinion, just saying something is so much more valuable than not saying anything. And for the people who are really struggling, like, for example, in the spring, for parents, when all of a sudden they're trying to work and have their kids at home, and, maybe they're not at home in a safe situation, like, how do you have that conversation? And I don't know if you have any tips or if there's anything that you would want to share about, like, what's the best way to, if you see somebody struggling, what's the best way to kind of initiate that conversation?
I think the thing that's most important is just acknowledging you're seeing something going on with them and you're worried and you're concerned about them. What we know is most important is just saying, here's what I'm seeing. I'm concerned. How can I help you? It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to have all the answers. But I think that acknowledgement in and of itself and that indication of caring is huge. And even if you don't have the answers, I think you said it very well, Angela, is being able to say, I don't know what we can do with this. I don't have the answers. And I think as an employer, you don't want to get into giving people advice on their mental health as a part of that. But I think what you can do is I can find resources, and I'd be happy to share those resources with you and also do what I can do to support you to be able to get to those resources as a part of that.
I have a quick question for the panelists. I'm curious, it seems that one of the important things that employers can potentially offer is that kind of that gift of just being present and listening. And I think several of you have alluded to that, and kind of creating that safe space or container for people to maybe work through their own emotions. Because sometimes, like you said, it's almost not necessarily about fixing those for people. That can get a little bit complicated, but letting people work through it a little bit, and also, offering resources. So curious whether any of you have strategies for how to create that space for listening and just really allowing whatever's coming up for people to come up.
I can jump in and then others can. I think one of the things that can be really helpful is, even when having those conversations, is, sometimes whether it's people that are working remote or they're working every day, is just having those touch base times that are a part of it, whether that's a walking around manager, whether that's a team meeting that's 2 minutes and you kind of pull everybody together as a part of it. And even within that meeting, you can start to do some things, especially right now, is they're very simple things. You can either go around and say, hey, what's the day like for you? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10? And people may say, I'm having a 10 or I'm having an 8. I had something really great and share that. Somebody may say, it's not been a great day as a part of that. And then others can just reach out and say, hey, do you need some support? Or I'm sorry to hear those kinds of things. I've had teams that have done thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. And then people can say, okay, who wants to share about that? But it's a part of that, keeping people connected and having those conversations as a part of it. Some people will choose to share in that. Others won't, but you're also saying this is an avenue as a part of it. Some may not share during the time, but they may connect with others later as a part of that. I think sometimes we just have to create those venues to keep people connected. And our connections are very different. And I think the other thing that's happened and we're hearing about is sometimes people connected outside of work with each other. And maybe that's been very limited now as to what they can do. Or with our social distancing, I don't have somebody that's close by me that I can have that conversation as I'm working. Or even I have to wear my mask every day. And so some of those social things that we do, those smiles or those things that keep people going. So we have to be more purposeful about it right now.
So I was just going to say that I think that it's very easy, especially when, this isn't just isolated to one group of people, what we're all going through right now. It's really easy to think about like a story of your own that relates to what they're telling you, to what your employee is telling you. And oftentimes it's not really helpful to hear about what somebody else is going through when you just want to be heard. And so I find it really valuable for myself to keep in mind, this is not a time to talk about myself. Like, I don't need to find a story that relates to what they're telling me. It's just to listen and to respond and even say, oh my gosh, that sounds really awful. And instead of saying, oh my gosh, the same thing happened to me, it's been so hard, I can't do same thing too, is just to be, like you said, to create that space. And that space isn't necessarily for you. And I know that as an employer, that can become its own like heavy burden on its own, but you have a responsibility, I believe, to your staff to be there for them and to help protect them and their mental health, and to kind of put that space between what do they need to hear from me, and that's probably not a story about yourself most of the time.
Angela, I loved that comment. From a little bit larger employer perspective, I know for us, it can be kind of tough to keep track of who's where. And, we just have larger teams. And I think it's giving people their power back, like if you need that, 15-minute break because you have Zoom fatigue, you've been on 3 Zoom meetings in a row, like just giving them the capacity to do exactly what they need for themselves, because we can't say, well, that 5-minute break should be enough when we're not in their shoes. And so I think just being a little bit more lax, giving a little bit more grace, and understanding that every situation is so different, and that if we can give people the tools and the resources and the space to do what's best for themselves, that hopefully they will take advantage of that and continue to flourish in this time.
I was also just going to add that, I think that you're so right about like just being a little bit more lax if you can, if there's a flexibility in the schedule for people to, start at a time that's more convenient for them with, kid situations or family situations or personal situations. If you realize all of a sudden one day as an employer, like, oh, well, this is the way the schedule has always been, but I guess like maybe that's not really, it doesn't have to be that way, is really kind of a powerful moment for you as the employer and also for the employee. And I think also I've been personally trying to give a lot more warning and heads up about any changes that might be coming, because there are so many changes happening on a regular basis, as opposed to just, saying, oh, well, nobody needs to know about this until Thursday. But if I know on Monday then I can, for example, then I can tell them on Monday, just because there have been so many surprises. So if there's a way to give people a heads up about anything that impacts them, I think right now is really, really helpful.
I received another question. For those of us who are working from home, we don't have that physical separation of space or that boundary between work and life. What sort of tips or strategies do you have or would you recommend to help create that structure?
So from a Union Bank perspective, most of our employees are still working from home, and it's hard to create that space between work life and home life. But again, it comes down to, I think, more of a balance now that we're here, and understanding that your computer or your phone or that kind of stuff has the capability to shut off, as much as we don't always understand that, but we can shut it off and we can shut down. And that's maybe more of a mental roadblock than an actual physical roadblock for us sometimes. I know I am guilty of that. I will get on my phone and pull up work email and go, why are you doing this? Well, because I can, to a certain aspect. And there's also that security in work where we've had so many changes, like Angela mentioned, that maybe work is the stable part of your life. You know that you'll go to work and you know what to expect. And so if you're able to have a life outside of work, is the part that I would call it, encouraging the hobbies, encouraging, if you're able to watch a movie, with, hey, we're all going to watch the same movie from the comfort of our own homes at the same time, or having those Zoom meetings, as much as we're going through that Zoom fatigue, but able to have things where you can't work 7 to 7 because you have other obligations like you used to have other obligations. And so again, encouraging more of that personal life. From a more like physical standpoint, the recommendations are to have, a separate space, be able to shut the door, shut the computer off, some of those things. But I'm going to let Gail kind of round off that question because she's kind of the expert in that area.
Oh, well, thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. I think you gave several things that are really good suggestions as a part of it. I mean, there's studies out there that are saying people are working on average 3 hours more because when they're working remotely. And that's from two things. One is I think that when they're working, they're wanting to make sure they're there, they have more access, they aren't counting their commute times as a part of that. And there's also a little bit of that fear of what if I don't produce when I'm up this, am I going to be able to? So I think being able to talk about those transitions throughout your day is really important when you're working remotely. One of the things I use every day, and I'm working in the office, is I love my drive time because that's my gear shifting time from I'm in this mode to on the way to work. I can think about what am I planning for the day? What do I need to do? And then I can do at the end of the day on my commute, I can do that kind of shut down and shift into my other gear. People have given that up at this point because they move from one to the other or they intersperse some of their home and their work activities. And I really encourage folks to create something that is that transition time to be able to help you think emotionally and mentally about when I am with that. Even if you have families, you can talk about with your kids. These are the times we have. How are we going to do that? If you're working with a spouse as a part of that, what's our transition? When do we have some of those things that we're going to be doing differently as a part of that? I'm not telling people to be clock watchers, but I think one of the things we can do is we do pay attention to, am I taking my lunch break? Am I doing something? I know a couple people I talked with, one of the things they do, no matter how cold it is, and this fits with what Sam is talking about, getting outside, is before they start in the morning, they do a trip around the block. And as they end their day, they do a trip around the block at home. Because again, it's very symbolic. But for us in our brains, one of the things that happens is that very much is that shifting of where's our focus and being able to be able to do that differently.
have another question. And I don't mean to put you all on the spot too much, but I'm curious as to what can we do on the part of the chamber, the city, and other such organizations to better support you all, employers, as you navigate these challenges. Is there anything we can do to support you in supporting employee mental health and employer mental health?
I think from a Union Bank perspective, it really comes down to, I mean, we've talked a lot about that, just sheer acknowledgement that this is going on, and like this virtual business to business is somewhat of that acknowledgement that we understand what you're going through. We see it, and we're going to do the best we can to somewhat address it or give you the tools and resources. I think that in the long run is, again, sending that message that we're listening. And that's what most of us want, is just being heard. As far as the actual offerings of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, I think there's lots of things, and probably many of them will be addressed in the business to business town halls to come.
I think, as Sam said, just these meetings and bringing the topics up and giving information is huge. I think the other thing is it's really important that when we find good things that work for different kinds of businesses, have an idea share kinds of things. If you can create some of those things, that would be helpful. What are the resources you're using? Where are we at with that? One of the things I think Lincoln is a big small town. And so I think people do a lot of really great connecting. I think, if some companies are saying, that's not something we could do on our own, but, maybe if we could get two small businesses to go together and we could both share the effort and the ability to do something like that, we could offer some things. So I think there's power in working together. I think that also helps business owners, managers, leaders to feel like they get some support too. Because so often right now, what I've heard with COVID is they spent the first 6 months of this just trying to figure out, how do I do my business? How do I manage this? How do I take care of everybody? But sometimes it's really nice to have someone else to say, here's what you're going through. Here's what I'm going through. What are your results? And sharing that, or could we work together? And I think that's particularly important for small business folks who can feel like everything's kind of on their shoulder, and having that, being able to be there for each other can be huge. Even if it's a listening ear or it's a joint sharing of ideas or processes or working together, can be really powerful.
I don't know exactly how the chamber can specifically do this, but the first thing that came to my mind was remembering that and reminding each other that we are all employees or employers, and we're also all customers, and we're also all the client. And so I think that just in times like these, like, how can businesses set a good example for not only helping themselves and their employees, but how can we also go out into the community? And Lincoln is really special and very good at this, but just remembering that we are also the customers. And as we try to protect and help our own employees, how can we be better customers and clients going forward to kind of reach outside of our own workplace to have a positive impact on other people who are working right now too when we interact with them.
That's awesome. Thank you. Do we have any more final with our last minute left? I know this information was very helpful for myself, but I know that it definitely resonated with everyone who's on this call today. All right. Well, I will let everybody have the rest of their afternoon back. Thank you again so much, Sam, Gail, and Angela, for joining us. Your perspectives and ideas and just thoughtfulness was beyond helpful as we continue to stay in COVID, but also push into the winter months because we all know it's a little challenging here in Lincoln. Well, thank you again and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.